This is probably one of the coolest things I've made.
Hello, I'm Shay and I like to make things, and this week I made a Doc Ock inspired dress. And I wore it on my very first runway. I feel like I'm just getting funkier and funkier with these projects. Last time it was octopus shoes, and this time we are going full silicone, kind of SFX, and I think of this as the next step in my crafting with silicone evolution. But before we get into things, this episode is brought to you by Cash App. Cash App is an easy way to send, spend, and save your money. Besides just sending money back and forth, with Cash App you can buy, sell, and send Bitcoin instantly. It's easier than every part of sewing, and most definitely easier than every part of silicone. Download Cash App today and use code YouTube for $50 for free, new users only. But back to the project, let me give a bit of background first. Every year, Her Universe and Hot Topic hosts a geek-inspired fashion show at San Diego Comic-Con. They pick 25 designers and each one makes a geek couture look and walks the runway in it. I have loved this show for years, and I've applied to this thing like 3 or 4 times, but I never got in. And so this year I was thinking of applying again, but it was looking like a pretty busy summer. I didn't know if I had the time, but I'm a really big Marvel fan, and ever since seeing that metal spine dress that Zendaya wore, I have just had it in my brain that I needed to make something Doc Ock inspired. So the night applications were due, I just decided to go for it. I sketched out my designs really fast. I whipped up like this whole video for the application, and lo and behold, 2 weeks later.
Oh my god, okay. I just got the email that I got in, my design got into the show. We're making a design for a fashion show.
My design they picked is called Ock's Arms, based on obviously Doc Ock from Spider-Man. This look was also really inspired by Iris Van Herpen. She's one of my favorite fashion designers, and if you've seen any red carpet, you've probably seen her stuff. She uses a bunch of new techniques and materials like silicone and 3D printing to create these incredible designs that are walking pieces of art. For this design, I really took inspiration with how she used silicone to create these very clean, smooth applications that you just can't get these shapes from fabric. So combining Doc Ock and Iris Van Herpen's fashion style, this is what I came up with. The base is a bodysuit with these metallic silicone appliques that mimic Doc Ock's little wiggly arms. And on top of that is a dress that also mimics that metallic paneled feel of his entire arm contraption. I would consider myself a decent seamstress, but I am definitely still a beginner when it comes to anything silicone. But nevertheless, I'm a big believer in you can figure out how to make anything. So I was gonna give it a shot. We've got our design, we've got our deadline. Let's make this. So first things first, let's pick up our supplies. Since this project isn't your typical sort of runway, it's very SFX based and has a ton of funky materials. I actually have to go to a couple specific stores in LA to pick up materials. First up is the LA Fashion District. I stopped by a bunch of stores and picked up a bunch of different silver fabrics because I'm not quite sure what color I'm going for yet, and I wanted to have some options to drape with. And now we are headed to the next stop, Reynolds Advanced Materials. This is the Hollywood SFX store. If you're doing anything, costuming, prop making, mold making, this is where you go. So Reynolds was a success. I got everything I needed. The last stop for supplies is gonna be Goodwill. I wanna see if I can find a mannequin of some sorts that I can use as a base to sculpt my stuff on.
I have a friend and we are headed back home with our supplies.
With all these supplies, let's get started. This design can be broken down into 2 big parts, the bodysuit and the dress. So first up, let's make the bodysuit. The basis for the bodysuit design are all these little ridges that go up and down my legs and mimic Doc Ock's arm design. I stalked Iris's page to see how she made her silicone appliques, and it looks like these silicone appliques are just super thin pieces of silicone that have been stuck onto tulle. So just like the octopus shoes, we're going through the whole silicone process again. We're sculpting our pieces, we're making our molds, we're pouring in our silicone, we're making them look all nice and pretty, and then we're sticking them onto the thing. First up, I need to sculpt all the pieces, especially this back piece, because it's kind of intimidating. So I started by sketching on my mannequin, figuring out the size, shape, and what position I liked. Then I could bring out the monster clay and start tossing around shapes. But I settled on using curved rectangles and this periodic spacing to imitate the flow and ridges of his arms. That's looking pretty good. Now that I had the basic shape, I could take it down, neatly remake it, and add all the details that would replicate the look and the texture of his arms. That is looking pretty Doc Ock-like. I went through the same design and brainstorming process for the spine. For that one, I went with more circular shapes to replicate both his original spine pieces and the anatomy of actual human spines. That was the hard part. Now I just gotta make a lot of these. I'm not a particularly skilled sculptor, so all of my designs are just tubes, rectangles, and circles. I can roll them out, cut them up, and just overlap them with each other, and it looks nice. I also chose for my appliques to have a size gradient as they flow across the body, so that way it will draw the eye and create this sense of motion, especially on those hip pieces. Once everything was sculpted, I laid them flat, built them their little mold boxes, and those are our finished sculpts. I am so freaking proud of how this came out. It really looks like a spine or like his little tendril bits, but now it's time to cast these and make their molds. Since these are thin and flat, they're really easy to mold. I just mix up each part of silicone, mix equal parts together, and pour it over my sculpts. Now I get to demold them. That's okay. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good demold. Look at all of these little molds. But with that, we were good to mix up our silicone and cast our final appliques. But before I poured a big batch, I wanted my appliques to be a metallic color, so I tested up a couple different techniques and colors.
Oh, that looks cool. It really looks like I'm part mechanical. Oh, this is gonna be good.
The method that worked best was pouring a black silicone base and then putting white pigment on top of the black silicone. So to create silver, we need the white pigment to sit on top of the black silicone. So rather than mixing it into my silicone, I'm painting my molds with pigment before I pour silicone. This way, when you pull it out, it'll sit on top. Look at how shiny. And now I'm just going to mix up my silicone, add a little bit of black pigment, and then pour it in the molds. How perfect! Now that these guys are full, I just wait about an hour and a half, and then we can pull them out. I overfilled my molds a tad, so I had to clean up my appliques, but once they were trimmed, they looked so nice. The bad thing about the silver coloring is it does tend to rub off a little bit, so I'm gonna give it a quick sealant just by a thin layer of Psycho paints, and then I can finally get to attaching them. So my little nubbies are sculpted, they're made. Now I just need to make the bodysuit that I will attach all those silicone appliques onto. But for this bodysuit, I really want the seams to be hidden, so I'm going to make a special pattern for it. And to do that, we are using the tried and true saran wrap pattern technique. Unfortunately though, this is the full body pattern, it's a bodysuit. So I need to make a full body saran wrap cast that I can cut up into a pattern. I'm currently a little sausage, and now we're gonna go cover it in tape so that this holds its shape a bit better. We ran out of tape, but we got most of it covered. So I'm gonna draw on the pattern lines that I want with Sharpie and then cut myself out of this, cut it up, and then I can use those cut up pieces as a pattern. Okay, I just realized that to do all the fitting and stuff for this, I have to be in my undergarments. So check back after this is all fit. Okay, this took a long time, but I made a bodysuit. It is so sheer you can actually barely see it. When you look close up at it, you can see like the wrinkles in the fabric and stuff, but from afar, it really gives the illusion that there's nothing there, which is gonna be perfect to glue my silicone appliques to. Gluing these on is actually super easy. I just used a paintbrush to paint the Silapoxy on the backs of the applique and then press the tool down. You have to work in small sections because the Silapoxy only has a 5-minute work time, but it holds to the tool very well and it cures very fast. I just glued the spine and I tried it on and oh my gosh, that looks so cool! So it's just a matter of getting the rest of the bodysuit glued, and then the whole bodysuit was done.
This is probably one of the coolest things I've made.
Look at that back! But like, wow. The illusion onto skin looks really good.
With the bodysuit done, we could finally move on to part 2, the dress. I'm keeping the whole dress pretty simple because I want the bodysuit to still be the focus of the outfit. So I'm just gonna start by playing around with the shapes and pleating until I get a shape that I like. Once I was happy with the shape that I draped, I hand sewed it together, and that was the top. For the skirt front, I liked the pleated look more than I expected, so I wanted to kind of continue that down. So I think I'm gonna try to do this like overlapping pattern. To make this pattern, I just cut strips and pinned them and sewed them 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 in this overlapping pattern, and making the strips bigger and bigger the further down the dress they got. So this is how the fabric turned out. I actually really like it. I think it's very cool. So I think I might actually do this really big for the whole train. So I think I'm just gonna roughly drape the train so I have kind of the basic shape that I need to make, and then just make a lot of this fabric. Also at this point, we're cutting the deadline a bit close. The show was in a day, so this was full factory mode. We were just cranking this thing out. It looks good! At this point, with the top done and the train done, this was the first time I could actually try the whole garment on. And trying it on, I realized some things. When designing this look, I don't think I took into consideration my personal comfort. You know how you can think of like a really cool idea, like, I don't know, making a bodysuit so sheer it'll just look like the stuff is coming out of your skin. But you don't really think about the practical implications of this idea. Like, I don't know, that means that wherever there are appliques, it will look like you are not wearing any clothing because they're coming out of your skin. Yeah. But there's just like a lot of me out in this. Like that's scandalous. That's a little scandy. But at this point, it was the day before I was leaving for the show. So I decided to ignore that problem. We'll deal with that later. I have a dress to finish. So I trimmed it real quick, gave it a lining, and did my best to finish the train. I'm still hand sewing the dress, but we've run out of time. I have to run to the dress rehearsal right now and just hand sew it in the hotel. My friend Kronos came down to hang out and help me with the show. When we headed to San Diego to make our way to Comic-Con, and we all got to get on the runway for the first time and practice our walk. I've never walked a runway before. I'm more of a seamstress than a model, but we gave it our best shot. And for not having ever practiced or walked a runway and being really bad at walking in heels, I'm gonna say it's passable, at least for me. Of course, my dress still wasn't done, so in between runway rehearsals, I was sewing my dress together in the hallways.
Is it really last minute if you're not sewing during dress rehearsals?
But after a full day of rehearsal, we got back to the hotel, took a nap, and at 8 p.m., we got started working again.
And now we are going to finish up the dress,
because the dress was not done and the show was tomorrow. We ended up staying up till 2 a.m. sewing.
It's that point of the night where I'm just fully sewing the dress onto my body.
And God bless Kronos, because they are the absolute MVP of this project. They woke up before me the morning of the show and helped me sew the skirt.
It is the day of the fashion show. We're gonna do some last minute hand sewing to finish some things up, but it's pretty much done.
And it really came together.
Cool.
And then we were off to the show.
All right, we are behind stage. I am in hair and makeup, and we are gonna do this. So we are about to go for judging and photos, and it should be fun.
I finally got to see everyone else's incredible designs.
We are headed to judging.
And we also went through judging, where the judges would individually talk to us about the design and see our garments up close. And after some last minute practice backstage, it was finally showtime. So without further ado, here is my Doc Ock inspired look and my first time walking the runway. It was really cool. The silicone appliques came out just like I imagined it. And I feel like I did Iris Van Herpen proud. I actually never walked the runway in the full outfit before I was walking on stage for the show. So in my brain, I didn't fully realize how scandalous it looked on the runway walking with the stage lights until I was watching the footage back the next day. And so while I'm a little embarrassed and self-conscious after, like, oh my God, I did that, in the moment, I was completely oblivious, faking that confidence, working my stuff, and I'm kind of glad. With an outfit like this, you need to just have the confidence and not second guess yourself. The best part of this whole experience for me was being able to meet the other designers. Each one of these folks is so talented. I could gush about every single one of their designs so much. If you're interested, you can watch the full show on the Her Universe YouTube channel. All these designers' looks are worth checking out, so definitely take a peek if it sparked your interest. If you want to see more content from me, I actually launched a Patreon last month. I'm actually posting a full tutorial on how I made this Barbie Western outfit just for fun, and that whole video is not going to be public. It's only for my behind the scenes Patreons. Everything you see here, Patreon probably saw it first. And thank you again, Cash App, so much for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to download the app today and use code YouTube for $15 for free, new users only. But that's about all for this video. For live project updates, check me out on Instagram. For more tutorials, subscribe to this channel. But I hope you're having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye! Despite the fact that I'm wearing very little, it is surprisingly sweaty because there is so much silicone attached to my skin